love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is out on assignment, but he says he will be in Birmingham next week as we get closer and closer to the media days. He said he'll be at the SWAC Media Day. We'll see about that. With that being said, welcome to episode 679 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small. From the NAIA to the NCAA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetic, as well as the business of HBCU sports. Quite simply, we call it sports pedagogy. I'm your host, Dr. Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, as well as AD Drew. Today, we're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live. KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer. That's multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in a beautiful home at Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that being said, just want to shout out for all those involved in all seriousness. That is Charles Bishop, Mike Washington, some of the folks that play in the background, Chris Gardner, G Boom, as we call him, Raymond Holly, Cicely, gives us a lot of work in terms of what she puts together. So I just wanted to shout out these individuals and many more, particularly our sports listeners, as we were listed as the number one best Black sports podcast. That's by a million podcasts has selected us and ranked us as the number one podcast. I want to also shout out to my colleagues over there at the BCSN as they were ranked in terms of great podcast, number two overall of what we do from all our collections of our podcast voices. So great accolades when you look at the best 30 Black sports podcasts. That's because of the listeners, what we put together. So I wanted to shout out to those all involved in terms of what's going on. So with that being said, let me bring the other co-host in here and make sure they get some accolades, rightfully so, in terms of what they're doing. That is none other than Charles Bishop, who's part of that number one ranked podcast out there in terms of HBCU sports. Charles, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Doing well. And Doc, I want to thank you for your stewardship of this podcast in terms of bringing not only sports and entertainment, but education week in, week out.
Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting, education, consulting, and data analytics. And as Charles said, I just want to, again, words well said. Appreciate you for sharing those thoughts. And continue to bring the fire like you do with your components and the way that you bring it. Sometimes your looks, certainly your voice. It's really entertaining. Let me bring on AD Drew.
We're going to be fighting about these rivalries for a second or two.
Exactly. One of the best in the business. In terms of a baseball vernacular, I know we closed out the season with Black College Sports Baseball, particularly with the SWAC. So I'm going to just say like this, coming in a pinch, when the batter comes up and you need a crucial run in terms of slugging it or getting that runner over, you got none other than AD Drew, and he seems to do it extremely well. So, AD Drew, I want to thank you also in terms of your overall contributions to this show and BCSN network in terms of what you bring to the table, including your own show with your co-host Brian. Y'all do a great job. So thank you for joining us again. And just wanted to say thanks.
Doc, you are really being humble right now, Dr. Cavil. So I'm going to take this over. Dr. Cavil voted the best HBCU podcast, or ranked the best HBCU podcast, Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, with co-hosts Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. And because of this podcast and the many other podcasts on the Black College Sports Network, our BCSN Pod Zone, which is an aggregate of all of our podcasts, including Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, the BCSN Sports Lab, the ONG Strike Zone, the Carlos Brown Show, Brave Talk, She Say Sports, and many other special contributions. That aggregate of podcasts was voted as the best Black sports podcast. So, Dr. Cavil, while you may be humble about how you are saying this, kudos to you, to everybody. When you came over and decided to allow us at the Black College Network to support and to produce your podcast, I think the pandemic actually brought this on, because you guys were live in the studio back then.
That's right.
And because of the pandemic, you found a way. You was determined to find a way to make sure that your voice was still heard, like a lot of us did back during those days. And we had our trials, we had our tribulations, especially figuring out the technology at that point in time, because this was new. That was new to all of us. While we dabbled with technology, no one. Who remembers life before Zoom? Kind of hard to remember, but that's what we were dealing with. And because you went from a regional and you had to know where to find a podcast, to becoming a national, international podcast, along with other people coming over to the Black College Sports Network, Carlos, Edmund, She Say, hey, and let's go back to the way back machine, Charles, the pregame show. Mm-hmm. Everybody at Dealer's done a good job, but it started right here on the Black College Sports Network. So yeah, I'm going to toot your horn. I'm going to toot my own horn, Charles's horn, and everybody else. We work hard over here. We do a lot, and a lot of this we do out of our labor of love, because the money in this is not good. But we feel that it is important that we get the story and get it out right. We don't have to be first. We just want to be right when we report on it and when we analyze it. And maybe that's why we're number one, Dr. Cavil. Plus, in addition to that, when we're breaking the internet and putting out controversial polls and controversial rankings and talking about rivalries and stuff like that, breaking the internet, and people out here chatting us up and everything like that, telling us how right or how wrong we are, things like that just help us get to that top spot, Dr. Cavil. So
I agree. Great. And I appreciate your additional comment, bringing it to everybody's attention.
Can I do one more shout out?
Sure.
WSSU Ram Nation, Steve Gaither. Great job yesterday in rebutting our list that we put out on Sunday. Professionally done. And just like we said, not only do you have to come with stats and facts, which you did, but you gave it. You told us who we pulling off, where you're putting your guy, and where we're moving the other guys to. If you have not seen what Steve put out yesterday, WSSU Ram Nation, about Cam Smith, a guy who Brian and I left off of our list on Sunday, and yes, Steve, I might have a regret or two about leaving that name off. I'll be fair and honest, but great job putting that out, and thanks for the shout out and recognize, and most importantly, Steve, the thing that you recognize, and I hope other people picked up on, You recognize how hard it is to put these lists together. And no matter what you do, somebody's going to be mad about that list. And you made a great point in bringing that out before you went in and ripped us a new one. So I appreciate that.
Hey, who got bumped off?
He took out Jerome Johnson.
Okay.
He moved Cam Smith into the number 8 slot where we had Aquia Glass, and bumped Glass down into the second 10. I don't remember exactly where he put him at in the second 10, but he bumped Glass down into the second 10. And Charles, there was a lot of guys who wanted to bump y'all other quarterback off, not Shador, but Terrio from 2010. We got a lot of comments about bumping him down and off of the list. So if you have not seen the list, it's available on X, it's on Facebook, it's a few other places. Got some great comments though. Appreciate that, Steve.
Shout out to Steve Gaither. Well done. As I watched it too, really good job in terms of how he handled that and the information he put out. And most importantly, as you talked about the end, he made sure the accolades were not about what you all didn't do, but the accolades about what that team did do. And the individual, really providing a North Star to him and getting him the true accolades he needs in terms of what he did, regardless of he was on the list. So kudos in terms of what that happened. And kudos to you all in terms of shining light on the historical nature of HBCU programs and bringing folks back memories that they literally had fell asleep on and lost. I want to give a shout out to Carlos Brown. Thank you for the credit there, but a lot of credit goes to you in terms of voice. When I was doing the radio, I give a shout out to Ralph Cooper, but I don't always do it for Carlos Brown. But he brought me on the show very early in the studio and out down there in Baton Rouge, giving me a voice to the people in that area with significant fan bases that allowed me to grow, do the business side of this. And we really bounced off ideas off of each other in terms of how to get better, how to make his show better, that he shines. And he was open to listening for different things. And he's a old school OG in this game well before I was in terms of radio. But he pivoted and he's continued to grow. And what he does on Saturday in terms of bringing voices, different dynamics, different perspectives, specifically folks that have history and experience in the HBCU landscape, with Charles Edmond being the voice, providing a framework from the sidelines, if you would, oftentimes bringing in the fans' experience. Also, his relationship, he goes across the board with administrators, what he's seen in the past. It's fascinating when you think about it, working with coaches. Then you have Coach Petaway, Hall of Famer there, champion from both the SIAC and SWAC, in terms of what he does coaching-wise, specifically for basketball, bringing that to the table. It's fascinating. And then you have your AD, Willard Brown, in terms of what he brings from an administrative perspective. When you coalesce with him governing that ship, pushing it through for 2 hours, man, they can get some really good conversation going, and you've seen that the last couple of weeks. So wanted to make sure that he gets those accolades.
Absolutely.
Good stuff in terms of what he's done there. And they bring the relationship between Southern Jackson State and FAMU and Southern, pillars of this, and Grambling as well, of some of the best and brightest. He quickly is able to bring that to the table and illuminate why that's so fun and interesting. So it's fascinating to see that. So kudos to him. The others, shout out to Roy in terms of a brainchild in a lot of ways of trying to figure out how to put together, had many sleepless nights, long road trips to find a way to continue to push the business. So want to make sure that he gets his accolades in terms of how he goes about pushing this business through. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to do what we do. Talk about that. We're going to take our first break, come back on the other side, and let's get into some news, do what we do. Shout out to those HBCU athletic programs out there and see what these two gentlemen say is hot on their mind. And then the second half of the show, we're going to get into some of this talk too. We're going to look at decades. We're going to go back 50 years, since this will be an anniversary year for some. as we start to look at who is going to be crowned the 2025 champion. Obviously, we look at it from a major division and mid-major division as we provide those champions for both divisions. We start off things when you talk about the major division with the MEAC SWAC Challenge that starts in Atlanta. You end in Atlanta with the Cricket Celebration Bowl, which features the champion of the MEAC versus the champion of the SWAC. But we certainly do not leave out the champions of the CIAA, SIAC, as they push forward in the playoffs. We see what that looks like. And maybe we'll even start on this anniversary, start looking for how there might be a bowl game between those champions. We'll see what that looks like as we continue to push, make our suggestions, and push things out there from that perspective. Who knows what may come next? But we're going to break down going back to 1975, give you the champions. We'll roll through 1985, 1995, 2005, 2015, and ask the question, which was the best champion over a 10-year period, since we're looking at the anniversary. So go back and get, for y'all don't count again, 1975, 1985, 1995, 2005, 2015. Talk about those champions. And I want to hear, over those 5 years, who was the best champion of the decade for those last 50 years, ending with the fives, right? We'll give you some updates in terms of who was actually listed as the champions, who gave them credit in terms of selector. And then we'll talk about the other conferences and essentially who they were up against. We'll kind of get a chance to see what these guys think. Did the voters, selectors get it right? Or do they feel a little different? Charles may even go off on some different years because, you know, he has some hidden secrets there. But before we get in that, the second half of the show, let's take our first break and come back and get into some news with these two gentlemen. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break for the #1 podcast. How about that?
I'm returning to Clinton Parish, and Tampa's my community. I grew up here, went to school here, and my wife and I make our home here. What makes Tampa special are its people. So when I represent someone injured in my community, it's personal. Call my office and speak to a real lawyer and not some referral service. I will fight the insurance companies to get the settlement that you deserve. At the law office of Clinton Parish, we take the pain out of being hurt.
There's a shot. To right. It might be. It could be. Right field. Grand slam. What a shot. That's how you get hot, young fella.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. All you guys at BCSN, we really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Compress the analytic data with your hip-hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill's inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Charles Bishop and A.D. Drew. The professor's in the building. With that being said, let me start with you, Charles. What's on your mind in terms of HBCU news of the day, as you see G Boom talking about homework assignment? Yeah, well, that's what we do.
No doubt. Oh, we start things off on a bit of a somber note, but I want to pass along condolences to the Johnson C. Smith University family as they mourn the passing of Pettis Norman, the first Johnson C. Smith Golden Bull to play in the NFL. A proud Johnson C. Smith graduate and standout student athlete, Mr. Norman made history with the Dallas Cowboys from 1962 to 1970, helping lead the team to 5 playoff appearances and Super Bowl IV. He continued his professional career with the San Diego Chargers and was inducted into the CIAA Hall of Fame in 1977. Beyond the field, Mr. Pettis was a trailblazer in business and a passionate advocate for civil rights and HBCUs. He remained deeply committed to Johnson C. Smith throughout his life, embodying the strength, excellence, and legacy of a true Golden Bull. And that is from Johnson C. Smith's website, but definitely want to pass on condolences on to the Johnson C. Smith family in the passing of Mr. Pettis Norman.
Well said. Charles, in your Cowboy fandom, were you a fan during the time that he participated with the Cowboys?
Probably that is before my time. Now, I am steeped in a lot of Dallas Cowboy history, but probably, and I was laughing about this the other day, just scrolling, NFL Network was on, but my first memories of the Cowboys is probably the 78 Super Bowl where they take on Pittsburgh. So, that's where my Tony Dorsettness kind of comes in, but definitely, I'm just Cowboy alumni now. So.
Yeah, I was just checking. Some of y'all go way back a little bit, so man.
I'm steeped in the history. Bullet Bob Hayes and all those guys prior to my first memories, but absolutely.
Good stuff. Let's take a moment of silence to honor Pettis Norman before we go to you, Drew. Prayers to the family. With that being said, and obviously the Johnson C. Smith family and alumni. With that being said, AD, what direction you want to go to today?
Swingman Classic coming up this weekend. Football Media Days coming up this weekend. So you know what I'm going to do, Dr. Cavil. I'm going off the beaten path, and I'm going with basketball. Well, the CAA, the oxymoron of this one, the CAA announces their 2 HBCUs are going to meet at the NBA All-Star Weekend, and this comes from those guys over at HBCUGameDay.com. 2 of the most storied programs in HBCU basketball are going to Hollywood. Hampton University and North Carolina A&T State University, longtime rivals and current members of the Coastal, Dr. Cavil, Coastal Athletic Conference will square off in the 2026 NBA HBCU Classic presented by A&T as part of All-Star Weekend in Los Angeles. The official date, tip-off time, and broadcast details will be announced in the coming months, but the significance of this CAA showdown is crystal clear. Reading on through the article. Since its inception, the HBCU Classic has been a key pillar in the league's broader commitment to amplify Black institutions and athletes. It's not just about basketball, it's about opportunity, visibility, and legacy. For Hampton and A&T, this is more than a game, it is a platform. With HBCU All-Star Weekend drawing global media attention and celebrity buzz, the 2026 Classic will elevate the programs, the players, and the powerful stories behind these 2 institutions. The lights of Los Angeles will be bright, but for two proud institutions, HBCUs, it will feel just like home. And being an alumnus of the HBCU Classic, the NBA do it right, y'all. I'm here to tell you, the NBA do it right. Steve said he didn't prove that article. Well, somebody gets in on it.
I was wondering. I was going to say. That's what he said.
Hey, get your boys together over there at Game Day. Get your boys together. We're going to blame the CEO on this one. But no, the NBA does it right. It's a one-of-a-kind experience. I think I said this when I came back, but I have done many of HBCU classics, large events, and that experience at that basketball game was top 3 all time for me of experience. And I've been to a many of classics. Football definitely number 1 on my basketball list as far as experience. I got one challenge for Hampton and A&T. Can y'all beat our attendance record from last year with Tuskegee and Morehouse? That's the challenge.
I like
had 12,000 inside, had 19,000 total. Can y'all beat the challenge? 12,000. You in, what is it called now? It used to be Staples. I don't know what it's called now, but y'all all know which arena that I'm talking about.
That's right.
But actually, it probably won't be in there because they usually do it in the secondary arena. So, but this Los Angeles, they got plenty of basketball arenas there. So wherever it is, can y'all get more than 12K? That's all I want to know. So Hampton alum, A&T alum, your challenge has been issued.
I know you didn't. You didn't challenge Aggie Pride. I know you didn't do that.
Yes, I did. Because I got 2 institutions behind me. I got my degree from one and my paycheck from the other, so I got both of them behind me. I'm putting the challenge out.
They did that. A good challenge. Shout out talking about HBCU All-Star Weekend game. Speaking of HBCU All-Stars, we'll talk about switches to baseball a little bit.
It's gonna be at the forum.
Western Forum. Okay.
Yeah.
Be good. Good information there. Shout out, and I see you did get it correctly. Coastal Athletic Association. That's the conference formerly known as Colonial. That you're referencing. My fault. It's CAA. That's what. But that being said, before we take this next break and come back and get into some of this dialogue, I want to shout out to the 50 players who were selected for the following HBCUs for the 2025 HBCU Classic rosters for baseball. That's Alabama A&M University, Alcorn State University, Bethune-Cookman University, Coppin State University, Florida A&M University, North Carolina A&T University, Prairie A&M University, Southern University, Grambling State University, Jackson State University, Mississippi Valley State University, Norfolk State University, Texas Southern University, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, University of Maryland Eastern Shore. You notice I am purposely living off just one HBCU. I will bring them up, but all of those are what we call a major division, the Division I. You do have representative for a mid-major program, Division II program, which is Morehouse College. A.D. Drew. I would like to reference, that you have a SID that's doing tremendous work, and I wonder how much of that may have been aligned to put his player in a position to get that invite. Won't say much here, but you just never know. When you do that extra, sometimes it pays off. But credit to the young man for doing what he needed to do, obviously, to be one of the representatives on the 50 players, and obviously the only Division II mid-major player amongst the group. Great statement made from that framework. So I did want to share that.
Yeah, I'll say this, Dr. Cavil. And when I took that job over at Morehouse, baseball coach came to me and wanted to make sure that I made sure that their stats were right. And the reason he brought that up to me was because when there was nobody in that position the year before, he had a kid who not only led the SIAC in home runs, but was one of the tops in Division II baseball. And no one knew about it. Did not have the stats entered correctly into the proper systems, and did not put out the releases, the articles, the recaps about it. That player was back on team. Did not have that type of year this year, but he did have a good year. But this kid also we knew was going to had the potential to be a special kid. So, is it conscious? Yeah, but it's only my job to report. He the one who got to go out there and run those hills.
That's right.
Practice, go to class, and do all that stuff. I got the easy part. All I got to do is punch a couple of strokes on the keyboard and tell the world about it. That's easy compared to what he doing.
Good shout out. Shout out to Laney. calling my wife fine. Delta Sigma Theta going up to Washington, D.C. I'm going to leave that alone. And we don't no problems, but I feel him in all seriousness. Good comment out there. Shout out to the women of Delta Sigma Theta.
I'm glad you recognize, Steve. I'm glad you recognize.
Yeah. Going up to D.C. to celebrate the convention. And we'll be following up in a couple of weeks, going up to Philadelphia. Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So let's take our next break and come back on the other side as we get ready for this football season and the conferences going up among this conference season, if you would, in terms of convention season as well. We'll get into some dialogue about some of the history of these national championship teams as we lead into Thursday and start telling you who to prepare for the SWAC Media Day as we start looking at that. Give you some updates also on the MEAC SWAC Challenge, which is all next week. SIAC Media Day. So a lot going on next week. So
CIAA
is going to move up a little bit. CIAA. And then the following week, we close things out with the MEAC. Boy, I tell you, it's going to be a long week. I will be on the road. I'll get to a couple of those. But as we see what that looks like, let's take our next break and come back onto the side and talk about some history. With that being said, we'll be right back after this next break.
Football fans, HBCU football is back in the ATL with the Cricket MEAC SWAC Challenge Kickoff. Representing the MEAC, North Carolina Central, and representing the SWAC, Southern Eagles, Jaguars, the Marching Sound Machine, the Human Jukebox. The kickoff trophy is up for grabs, and bragging rights are on the line. The rivalry is real. Bring the family and join us pre-game for the fun-filled Coca-Cola fan experience, including band jamborees, food, activations, and fellowship. For tickets and information, visit MEACSWACChallenge.com.
It's like a loot machine. Going around town, trying to get down. It's like a loot machine.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna love, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil's with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab as we get into the discussion here of champions in the magnitude of decades. This will be an anniversary year for those champions that ended in 5 for 2025. Again, we'll just go back to 1975 for the sake of time and direct memories that folks around still have some. There might be some out there in 1965, but I want you to get a little past back that. A lot of us going to have to pull up our history books. Might have to do that a little bit here. Let me first ask you all this question. Who do you recall was the champion or champions, because back then you had a multiple level of champions, oftentimes. In 1975, Charles, do you know who the champion was?
In the SWAC?
I'm just saying.
I would guess
the national champion.
HBCU national champion. I would venture to say probably Grambling around that time.
Grambling was one of them. 80. Drew, do you know the other? Because there were two champions.
Actually, no. Would it be? Nah. Was it Texas Southern back then? Because they were considered a small school back then.
Yes, at that time, there was not a breakdown between small division, large divisions, or major, mid-major. So we like to call them Division II, Division I. This actually came out of the SWAC too. Southern was 9-3. Grambling State was 10-2. Eddie Robinson, they were recognized by a couple of the products out there, the ABW and J, MBN, NBN, and NBC. That's Pittsburgh Courier, the last one, their national magazine, newspapers, I should say. Southern was coached by Charles Bates. Grambling, as you imagine, was Eddie Robinson. There is a little asterisk, for lack of better words. Record includes a forfeit game, which was 10-1. As Grambling was a SWAC champion, rule vacated and by extension, not eligible for automatic bid to the Pelican Bowl postseason. So guess who got to go to the Pelican Bowl, which was Southern. They won that game as they won the Pelican Bowl. So they gave some thought from those out there, and you actually get a split champion. But let me get to some of the other teams that were on the board where it really gets interesting. Out of the MEAC, you had North Carolina A&T that finished 8-3. They were 5-1 in the MEAC. You actually had a three-way tie in the SWAC, Charles. This is one of those years where you probably tried to figure out why Jackson State wasn't recognized. They went on to the playoffs, as you know. Grambling was 10-2 overall, as I said. They were 4-2 in the SWAC. So you just had 7 teams in the SWAC playing 6 games. JSU was 8-3.
Yeah.
4-2 in the SWAC. Southern was 9-3, 4-2 in the SWAC. They got the benefit. Southern playing in the Pelican Bowl. Jackson State probably was harmed with going into the playoffs, losing that game. And then you had Grambling that just had the Gotti record at 10-2. Said you had CIAA was Norfolk State University. They were 8-3, 7-1 out of CIAA. Back then, at that time, the SIEC actually had 2 divisions. They had a Division II and a Division III. Bethune-Cookman was over there. They were 10-1, 5-1, while Fisk obviously was not playing football, couldn't even get their record out of Division III. So thinking about that, I'm gonna start with because I know what Charles probably gonna go. So I'm gonna start with Drew. Would you agree with the championship here, Grambling State, Southern, as recognized, or would you go with one of the other teams off the board that I just talked about?
Answer this one way. Who won the head-to-head that year?
I think they all
just those two.
Split between those two. Oh, between Grambling and Southern?
Yes.
Let's see.
That's a great question. Who
Whoever won that head-to-head would get my vote if I was voting.
I got you. Southern, the Bayou Classic, Louisiana Superdome.
Which is why you had
the score was 33-17, 73,214 there, and Grambling won that game.
Grambling.
Wow.
Pause.
Question
73,000.
Yeah, 73,000. 214 to be exact was listed as the attendance for that game. It was rocking in there. 1975.
1975.
That wasn't that the year the dome opened?
4 years after I was born. Yes. 75. I think so.
I think that was the year it was open.
Yeah. Charles, what are your thoughts?
I can definitely go with Grambling. I grew up on listening to my uncle being so upset about that 74, 75 season, about how Jackson State had all this talent and couldn't beat Grambling in that particular season.
I was just going to ask you.
Did Jackson State have a running back during that time?
They did have a running back by the name of Walter Payton.
Okay.
They had a linebacker by the name of Robert Brazil, too. So
Okay.
he was probably pretty validated in why couldn't we beat Grambling that particular season. So, yeah,
Hey, guess what, Charles? Guess where the game was played? Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have it listed as 25,700 to 30,000 in terms of fans, but they lost 24-14 for the exact score back in October when that game was played. They have a loss to Prairie View in the Cotton Bowl. Grambling did. They have a 0-0 in terms of them having to forfeit that game. In terms of their two losses, just to give you some updates of what took place there with those games. So interesting. They played North Carolina A&T. They did play Norfolk State that we talked about. So that's another reason why Norfolk State didn't get the love. They got to play them. That was in Flushing, New York at Shea Stadium was that game in terms of place there. They played Oregon that season. They won 19-12. This is some historical facts there. At Hawaii, Aloha Stadium, Hawaii, I should say. They won that game 20-6. So to what we call now FBS programs, they took down to give you some love, beating A&T. So they beat the MEAC and they beat the CIAA champions that year. So that's a team that you're going to have to think about when we go back. 1985. I'm just going to go straight here. Co-champions. You have Hampton, the 10-2, Fred Freeman, NCAA Division II program. You had Jackson State was 8-3. WC Gordon gets it done. SBN named them a champion. So you get your first SBN reports moving from the newspaper days, if you would, from the Pittsburgh Courier, moving there. Where it gets a little interesting, you have MEAC. Winner was Delaware State, 9-2. They were 4-0, 5 conference teams in the MEAC. You had a conference tie. Grambling went 9-3 that year, 6-1. 8-3 was Jackson State. You had Hampton at the CIAA with 10-2, 6-1 in the CIAA. SIAC was Fort Valley State, 8-1. Couldn't find their conference record. They were tied with Alabama State for the Division II side, and Miles College won the Division III, and I have no record for them. So that's 1985 team when you think about Jackson State schedule. I'll give some love to Jackson State a little bit in terms of 1985. See if I can find their schedule. Give you updates there.
I remember 85 well.
What do you remember about that while I'm looking this up, Charles?
I'm 12 years old, and I will never forget in that particular season, Mississippi Valley State had a young wide receiver by the name of Jerry Rice and Willie Totten. And when I say Valley captured the imagination of the state, and they had a following. My God, the Delta turned out when this team showed up and showed out. But they came to Jackson, and Jackson had a significant winning streak against Valley. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the final score in that game, Valley beat Jackson State 35-14. So that was one of their losses in that particular season. But Jackson State had a squad. I mean, they had a guy, Jackie Walker, that was coming off the edge. They had a young man from Provine High, Darryl Jones. I think he was a SWAC newcomer of the year that year, but I mean, electric return man. Oh, man. And that season, man, that was the beginning of Camelot for Jackson State football. When you start talking about 85, going into about 80, 88, 89, if I'm not mistaken, 28 games, SWAC win streak.
Man, Charles showing out a little bit. Grambling was ranked number 8. Jackson State number 15, Alcorn State number 20 in terms of that season. Big wins against FAMU in Bragg Stadium.
Went down to FAMU. That was my first trip down to Bragg. First trip to
28. They win that game 28-23, so it was a good one.
Yeah.
They have a loss. And this game was actually in Jackson, Mississippi, so this is before you think about the Southern Heritage game. They
Tennessee State.
Tennessee State.
Yeah.
Non-conference game, they lose 31-44.
Yeah.
High scoring contest there.
Yeah.
They go down to Blackshear, Prairie View. You know, I'm gonna give Panthers a shout out. They win 21-3. That's why Charles in that windstorm game when he saw Prairie View go down there, and I mean Jackson go down there Prairie View, he had that look on his face. They lose Mississippi Valley.
Yeah.
State, which is not something that you used to saying in those parts.
60 some odd thousand in Mississippi Veterans Memorial Stadium. I remember that vividly. Yeah.
Carlos wouldn't like this. They beat Southern. It's in Jackson, 27-9. They beat Grambling. That's when the game was in October. Who was number 2 at the time. Mississippi Valley. They beat them. Grambling State, 35-26. They do take care of Texas Southern. Give some love. They played Morgan State. Play that in Jackson, 42-6. This is time when Morgan State had some heck of a game, obviously, and they beat Alcorn in the Soul Bowl, as they call it at the time, 31-21. 34,000 fans at that game. They go to Georgia Southern. That was ranked number 9.
Tracy Ham. Woo!
And lose that game. I think Georgia Southern goes on to win the national championship.
Yeah, Tracy Ham and that ham-bone offense. Irk Russell. I remember that. Yeah. Daddy gassed up the RV. We was at every game that year.
So right now we get quite a few of these SWAC champions, and while you start to hear the reputation of why SWAC fans are lathered up, you see the other teams in here. We're making sure we give love. I'm going to go one more before we take the next break, and then we'll get the last two. 1995, we get a solo champion. First solo type in terms of which is, you know where this is going. This is Southern. This is when you get the Pete Richardson era. They were 11-1. Named by ADW, ASW, AURN. They win the Jim Walter Holmes Heritage Bowl. That was Heritage Bowl 5. FAMU was 9-3 that year. Drew 6-0 in conference play in the MEAC, getting the
I think
dub.
those were the Earl Home days. I think he may have been gone by 95, but yeah. And young Drew was trying to get off campus by then. You're trying to take them last classes in 95.
95. I was on campus in 95. We knocked off Southern that year in 95.
And to your point, guess what? Yeah. Because of that, you win the conference because you go undefeated. You're 9-3, 7-0 in the SWAC and don't get the Black College National Champion after beating Southern. And I think a lot of that, again, was the fact they played in the Heritage Bowl, which means Jackson State obviously win the conference. They go to the playoffs. They lose to Marshall.
Chad Pennington.
Yeah. Marshall was number 6. Game was played in Marshall.
Yeah.
And they lose 38-8, which hurts them going down. They do lose the floor at FAMU that year.
Lost to FAMU. That was my second time at Bragg. Yep.
As Drew was alluding to. 15-12. Classic game, though.
Didn't have
and they opened it up. And I remember this game. They lose to Alabama A&M. That was still not a member of the SWAC at the time. In Legion Field, I'm coming down there bragging about the SWAC. And he used that game 21-20.
Gotcha.
48,800. Yes. SIAC getting it done in that. They do beat the rival Tennessee State, and this is in the Southern Heritage Classic at this time. It's moved there. Liberty Bowl. They win 24-18, 48,533. So a lot of fans. They go up to Chicago in the Chicago Classic against Alabama State, win a close game, 24-22, 36,000 fans there. Bringing Southern to the game you talk about where they beat them. Southern was ranked number 10. They beat them 16-14 in the Classic contest in front of just under 60,000, 57,376 to be exact. Nice in there. They beat Grambling 29-28 Classic game. So they have some big wins there. Alcorn State, 55,000 listed as fan, 300 to be exact. Capital City Classic, what that game had called then, as it was played in Jackson, Mississippi. So 75, 85, 95. Charles, I mean,
95, I'm in the SGA. I was one of those people that was walking around waving. I used to get so upset. Like, I just want to watch the game. Come on.
Drew, you trying to get off campus and he forced to be on campus waving at
Man.
Y'all were there to witness a lot of this, so this is good stuff when it starts to mean something. Let's take our next break and come back on the side. I'll give you the last two, 2005, 2015. And get your final thoughts in terms of those 5 teams over the decades. Which one you're ranking? I'll let you rank the top 3. And then I want you to do it from 3, 2, 1. Who was your favorite champion during those last 50 years in the increments of 10, talking back 1975 to 2015, as we look forward to a 2025 this year to see if somebody can knock one of those teams off your top 3. With that, let's take a late break, come back on the side, get a little more talk in history, looking at going way back in the canon a little bit and talking about some of these great HBCU football programs over the year in terms of look like. Before I do that, I do want to say that Hampton won the MEAC. They were 11-1, 9-0 overall in terms of that 2005. But we're going to save the rest of that a little bit as we come back after this break, letting you know that Virginia State did win in 1995. They were 9-4, 7-1 the CIAA. Albany State won a tough SIAC. They were 6-5 overall, but 6-2 in getting it done. As you just go to the Division II, 1995, no longer Division III programs listed in there. We'll be right back after this next break, last break.
Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Lab. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Lab, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app. As we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Football fans, HBCU football is back in the ATL with the Cricket MEAC SWAC Challenge Kickoff. Representing the MEAC, North Carolina Central, and representing the SWAC, Southern Eagles, Jaguars, the Marching Sound Machine, the Human Jukebox. The kickoff trophy is up for grabs, and bragging rights are on the line. The rivalry is real. Bring the family and join us pre-game for the fun-filled Coca-Cola fan experience, including band jamborees, food, activations, and fellowship. For tickets and information, visit MEACSWACChallenge.com.
Compress the analytic data with your hip-hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's go with 2005. We have 3 teams that were listed as champions of this year. North Carolina Central, 10-2. Division II program at the time. Do you know who they were coached by? Either one of you all remember who coached North Carolina Central in 2005?
That's prior to Jerry Mack, so.
Yes.
Oh, good question. Oh.
He is coach. When you say the name, he won champions at 3 different institutions.
Oh, okay, Broadway.
That's it.
All right.
That's it. Hampton was 11-1. You know who that coach was?
That would
I'm gonna give you.
Was that Taylor?
Yes,
Taylor.
I was just gonna say he coached at FAMU for a minute.
I was gonna say because I was trying to remember if he was still up there at that time.
Now I'm gonna go a little harder on this. See if you remember this. Grambling State. They were 11-1. Do you remember who they were?
Melvin Spears.
Yes. It was after Doug Williams.
Yeah.
Spears takes over and gets.
See, I would have got that one wrong.
This is also after I start providing my formula for national champions, Dr. Ville's HBCU Sports. So I initially have mid-major and major division champions. So that's one of the ways that North Carolina Central was actually recognized as a national champion. First one out there to do it, the only one listed, North Carolina Central Rod Broadway. Credit to myself in terms of seeing how much talented Rod Broadway was and what the team did. Remember, this is a team that went down Baton Rouge, beat Southern in terms of having that on the record. I know they played A&T. I believe they beat them. Well, I'll check on that to give you an update there. Joe Taylor had a heck of a squad, Grambling State years to give you that. But let's look a little deeper. What Hampton did. Hampton was 11-1, 9-0 in the MEAC. They have transitioned to the MEAC by this time. SWAC, this is the history that you'll fascinate you a little bit, Charles. This is the time now that you have a SWAC championship game. You have 2 divisions. So Grambling State plays Alabama A&M, very talented team that was 9-3. When 7-2, they faced off against Grambling. They won that championship 11-1, 9-0 in terms of that. CIAA was North Carolina Central. They were 10-2 and 6-1. As we told you about how talented they were. SIAC, you have Albany State. There was also a talented team, 9-2, 7-1 out of the SIAC. So you got this might be a little more challenging in terms of some teams that probably could feel that they got holes. Hampton just couldn't win the playoffs. Yep, that was one that they thought they had William and Mary. That was really close. Check this out for Grambling. Their only loss, though, was to an FBS program. Washington State on the road.
Yeah.
That's their closest game. Who was the opponent in their closest game in the SWAC? 3-point win. It was on the road.
That Grambling was on the road?
Yes.
Oh. Texas Southern?
They beat up on Texas Southern. That was in Grambling, 58-21. They go on the road at Arkansas Pine Bluff and just get out of there with victory, 26-23. The closest score they had in terms of the games they won all year long.
Wow.
Wins over Alabama A&M. They beat them actually twice. First time they shut them out, 44-0. In the championship game, they went 45-6. So they had Alabama A&M's number. Beat up on Alcorn State, the Braves 46-19. Beat up on Southern 50-35. That's Katrina year. So that game, I was there.
That was in Houston.
They was there. It was actually in Houston at Reliance Stadium, which is a little different there. So interesting when you think about that a little bit in terms of what was going on from that point.
Dr. Vick, wasn't that the Bruce Eugene days also?
It's got to be Bruce Eugene, yeah.
The guy who we just made our number one guy in our most impactful players in the last 25 years. Wasn't that his team? I'm just trying to put a little correlation together for everybody.
I like the way you did that. North Carolina did beat A&T. They just nipped by A&T that year, 23-22. They beat up Edward Waters as Edward Waters bringing back football, still in the NAIA at the time, 77-12. Just put it out there. They lose to St. Augustine. at homecoming. 22-8 was the score of the game. And so that's a little history in terms of what took place. That was not the necessary year that they actually lose to Southern. That's another year where they get that done. But I wanted to give you a little bit about what took place there in terms of some credible teams when you talk about what was taking place on the landscape for that. Let's go down a little and give you a little Hampton Pirates in terms of their schedule that year, as you alluded to what was taking place.
Wow, it's been 20 years already. Wow.
Yeah, I told you it's crazy when you think about what was taking place over this period of time. They beat Jackson State. Hampton did that year, 20-7 to open up the season.
I was about to say, yeah.
Which was come normal. They run Howard 22-12 is normal. And
Games in Orlando.
They beat Gardner Webb 52-21 in terms of what takes place. They beat number 19 was ranked South Carolina State 14-10. They beat up on FAMU 34-14. Take on Savannah State, conference member at the time, 44-6. That year they lose at Richmond 38-10 in the playoffs in terms of what that looks like. Last one we'll go on here to finish things out in 2015. North Carolina A&T 10-2. Go back to Rod Way. I named them the champion of a major division. You have HSRN ranking teams by then. To give you some of the ones out here, AURN, quite a few people are doing polls by this time in terms of this. A couple of more now doing Division II or mid-major levels. So Tuskegee gets in the mix, 10-3. AD Drew, give you some shout out there. Willie Slater. Yep. Again, I ranked them number one in terms of the poll rankings that came out for the Division II. HSRN by then is doing the Division II ranking as well. AHSR is doing one as well. Who are some teams that you want to think about here? MEAC, North Carolina A&T 10-2, 7-1. They play Alcorn State that wins the SWAC championship game over Grambling. Grambling was 9-0 coming out of the West, while Alcorn was 7-2 coming out of the West. So a little bit of upset in the SWAC championship game there. CIAA winner was Gaither. Stephen Gaither was fighting Gaithers there.
Yeah, there was some good Winston teams back during that time. Also, that was right. I think Maynard had left then, but they still had good teams during those times. Because I know, not to be cutting you off, but I remember Tuskegee and Winston used to try to battle because I believe the Pioneer Bowl had went away by then,
right?
And they were still trying to figure out because those were the top two Division II teams at that point in time.
Yeah. Winston-Salem was coming off of that and going back and forth, starting to take the bit. They were just 6-5 overall, 5-2 in the CIAA, but they get it done. Miles is getting it done as they were 7-5 and 5-0 coming out of there. In terms of your AD now was the head coach over there at Miles getting it done. Celebration Bowl, talking about that was the inaugural Celebration Bowl to give you way back this 10th anniversary. As A&T gets it done 41-34.
Tariq Cohen.
Yep. Makes his
number 3 on our list.
Yeah, getting it done. So you see when you start looking at the list and you see these teams, when you start 25 and what they did nationally for championships, you kind of see a little bit more about this list, why it makes sense in a lot of different ways, particularly when we're talking about that. So with that being said, ask you the tough question. Going with you, AD Drew. Again, I'll read them over. I want you to rank your top 3.
Before you read, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, that year for Tuskegee, was that the year that Virginia State came and beat us, but we had to play another game and Virginia State gave us that game because we didn't have enough games to get to the playoffs? Because of weather or something, we had like a couple of games canceled on us after the schedule, and we did not win the SIAC Is that the year that I'm thinking about? Because I'm thinking that was Fort Valley and Kentucky State in the SIAC championship that year.
I have it right here
I
for
see
you.
D2 in the chat. He may
You
remember
start
that.
off with Tuskegee, Whitewater Classic with Albany State. You win
It would have been last
You played Winston-Salem State that year. There in Abbott. Let's go a little further. You played non-conference UNC Pembroke. You get a tough loss there, 29-17. At that time, giving you a little way back, Stillman was part of the SIAC. You beat them 49-2. Playoffs, you beat Chattawawa 26-16. You beat North Alabama 35-31, and have a tough loss to West Georgia as you're getting into the quarterfinals there.
Steve said it was the next year that I'm thinking about, because that was part of that 3-year run that Tuskegee had of making it to the playoffs.
Yeah. Some good stuff there. So stay with you, AD Drew. 1975, Grambling State Southern 10-2, 9-3. Did win the tie for regular season. 1985, Hampton 10-2, Jackson State 8-3. Tied with Grambling State in the regular season. Hampton wins the CIAA outright in terms of that. 1995, you have Southern. They actually lose to Jackson State in terms of the championship. FAMU wins the MEAC. 2005, 3 teams that recognized championship: Grambling State, Hampton, North Carolina Central as a mid-major champion. In 2015, North Carolina A&T, Broadway, Tuskegee in terms of 2015. So, Drew, give me your top 3 over this 50-year period.
I'm gonna go 3-2-1, and this is tough. I think I am going to go with 75 Grambling in the number 3 slot. I knew I was gonna get the one eye, Charles.
It's yours.
Charles, this is my list. Did I just say this on Sunday? This is my list. You make your own list. You gonna have your time in 2 minutes. Give me about 2 minutes.
Damn.
Okay. 75 Grambling is my number 3. 05 Grambling is number 2.
Damn, 2 Gramblings.
Yeah. And that might be a little bit of recency bias because I have memories of that team. So there may be a little recency bias. But number 1, I have to go with 15 A&T because that was actually a championship game. That was not mythical.
I like that. Right.
So I have to put that number 1 because we actually got a chance to determine the champion on the field.
Good stuff. Charles?
This is a very tough question, Doc. And I'll do 3-2-1. I would probably start with, and I have to kind of break it down by eras. I'm undoubtedly, I'm a child of the SWAC, and I grew up on the lore of the SWAC. So, when you start throwing out Doug Williams and Carlos Pennywell and Dwight Scales, all those guys from that Grambling team of back then in 75, they hold a level of significance, especially when you talk about the talent that was in HBCU football and in the SWAC in the 70s. I mean, I grew up on just people larger than life. So I would probably say, let me go back. Number 3, I would say the 95 Southern team. And it's just me being in school during that time and the tension in the air between Jackson State and Southern. They get a game, we get a game. The band, it was just a perfect time period for me being in the conference.
And that decade ends with the first SWAC championship game in 1999.
Exactly.
Off with both teams winning 3 championships over the decade. And the final one goes to Southern in the SWAC championship game. Loads of talent 2 first rounders end up being on that Jackson State team.
Absolutely.
Southern gets it done. I was there at that game in Birmingham, so I can agree with you how historic it was in terms of the first SWAC championship game.
The one game a tear came out of my eye after losing that game to Southern. So that SWAC championship game. But I have to that 95 Southern. Then from there, I would say because it's during the 85 Jackson State Black College National Championship team, because it's during my preteen, my formative years, and those guys are like gods to me. You know, when you start talking about the Jackie Walkers and the Shannon Boys and the Lewis Tillmans, those guys that my family, we're growing up traveling with Jackson State week in, week out. So that team holds a huge significance for me. And then, like I said, that time period starts this sort of Camelot of Jackson State football, special time in my life in terms of being in junior high. Following this Jackson State football team. But undoubtedly, I think number one for me has to be the Grambling 75 team. And like I said, you grow up on these stories of, not only Peyton Brazil, Ricky Young, Jackson State, all the Jackson State, but it's the guys around the SWAC, the Pennywells, the Doug Williams that you hear your fathers and your uncles talking about. I mean, sitting around having barbecue with Coach Castle, because my neighbor was a huge Alcorn booster. Having barbecue with Big John, because my other neighbor was a huge Tennessee State guy. So Big John Merritt on your street, and you're sitting down talking football with those guys. So that just holds a whole different significance for me. So I have to go with 75 Graham, especially the talent in HBCU football during that time.
Well, we're going way back, 75, all the way up to the first 2015. Good match when you talk about. I would like to see everybody else the top three over this period of time. We have a Grambling, and A&T, and then Charles, you had
Grambling 75, Jackson State number 2, and Southern 95 number 3.
Wow, interesting. A lot of swag there, but it's a whole different discussion. But that being said, great information, great dialogue. Hopefully, folks were entertained, got a lot of good information. I love to see people tell me what are their top 3 when you start looking at the ends of 5s. As Stephen Gaither said, some programs out there, those 5s may not be as good a years, but a lot of good talk. Made sure that we gave love to CIAA, SIAC, MEAC, SWAC. Even a little bit there snuck in what that looks like. Lennon says, don't forget my Norfolk States in 74, 75, 76, CIAA 3-peat, 75. Good point. We gave him a shout out. We talked about that 75 Norfolk State team out of CIAA. A lot of good stuff. Brian Wolford says A&T at number 3, 2015. Grambling State in 75, number 2. Southern number 1 in 95. I wonder if that happens to do when he was there picturing it a little bit in terms of what that looks like. Eric Evans says, how about 95 Albany State Golden Rams? They won the space 5 years in a row, 93 to 97. Woo, it's a lot of talent. Good history. Keep it coming out there. Keep it coming before we shut it down. Good stuff in terms of that history. As we get ready for 2025, somebody's going to get a chance to put their names up there on the mid-major, major level, national champion. Somebody is going to be part of the Cricket Celebration Bowl. We'll get a champion out of the MEAC, champion out of the SWAC. We'll get our champion from the CIAA, champion out of the SIAC. See if these independents can make a move. Tennessee State, can they find a way to get it done in the OVC? Big South, can Hampton? I know A&T is kind of rebuilding, but out of the CIAA, I'll say it. Drew corrected me, make sure that I understood that they like to make sure everybody knows it's the Coastal Athletic Association, although it's formally known. But that's a whole different discussion. Lennon says they're celebrating. I know that's right. Edwin, SU has some explosive scoring and strong defensive teams and Pete's best players included. 1995, good stuff, Edwin. Those games were fun and tested our hearts, no doubt.
Yeah, I didn't know if I pulled it down for you too fast. So
yep, Lennon says we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Spartan Legions. Good stuff. As we said, we wanted to make sure we recognized, and that's why we not only talked about the national champions, but we also talked about the conference champions to give you a little perspective of how deep the pool was in terms of what that looks like. That 2005 year really excited me when you start talking about how strong it was across the board. A lot of teams going D2 playoffs, FCS or 1AA playoffs at the time. You still get strong champions in bowls and stuff like that. We go all the way back to the Heritage Bowl, to the Cricket Celebration Bowl, everything mixed in between, and gave you some season analysis there. With that being said, thanks for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. And we hope you enjoyed it again. We want to thank you for Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, and A.D. Drew. Oftentimes, that's Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. We look forward to next week as we give you a show on Thursday. But we get excited as we get into media day to see what all the coaches are saying, illuminating some of those key players that will be part of a championship run. We'll discuss the latest news in the lab. As Brian said, hit the thumbs up and like button. We certainly could use it. Appreciate you supporting us in that matter. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. That's DrKenyattaCavil. That's Threads, Facebook, and Instagram. Shout out to BJ Jones. We gave him a little love to the Southern out there. Shout out to Joshua Sims Sr. Gave him a shout out to North Carolina Central. So we got a lot of folks, some love today. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube, giving you what you need. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Facebook as well. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Drew?
I'm number one, y'all. Lecture.
Dismiss.
Or should I say we number one?
Yeah, we Black Sports #1 podcast. How about that?